Good morning, almost afternoon. I'm Jan Anderson. I'm representing the Regional Educational Laboratory for the Mid-Atlantic. As you heard at the beginning of this morning's session, we support educators state level, local level, collaboratives, consortiums, people with their feet on the ground as they wrestle with a variety of different kinds of issues for helping children learn better, actually, helping teachers teach better. And that can take, as you know, action from a variety of perspectives. This is drawing on research and coaching and helping that we're doing in the western part of Pennsylvania in a group of districts located mostly around Pittsburgh. And they come together with a partner of ours called the Consortium for Public Education. It's a nonprofit. They get funding from a variety of philanthropies and businesses in that area. And their number one goal is to help districts better prepare students for life after high school. That can be pursuing a career in the military, pursuing some advanced training, maybe with a 2-year certificate, pursuing a 4-year degree, whether or not they finish 2-year degree, whatever. They have found in that area around Pittsburgh that almost regardless of whatever step a student takes after high school, sooner or later the student ends up back in the Pittsburgh area. Lots of students come back, and it's a very strong family orientation. And so districts have felt for a long time, and now of course businesses are weighing in also, that it behooves districts and their partners to think ahead of these students who will be returning. So their particular focus is career readiness writ large. There's some college prep in it, but the schools pretty much take care of that themselves. The career readiness, as you can imagine, builds more on regional resources. I guess I should advance this. Awesome. So one thing that has come up with interviews in around Pittsburgh with the various hiring officials, and this has been documented in some reports by some of the nonprofits, is that they would like for students to present themselves at their door seeking jobs with more of the, shall we say, soft skills, the career readiness that would be being able to take charge of a problem, lead a group, communicate well, own results, the kinds of things we hear from a lot of perspectives. But the business community is saying this. They also did some interviews with the business community saying, well, how well do you feel the students that you see in your hiring offices, in your HR office, how well are they prepared in some of these things? And the businesses, as I include, said not so well on this and that. And then they interviewed the students themselves or the people who were being interviewed, and they said, yeah, they had this skill, they had that skill. So clearly there's a disconnect there. And there are a lot of reasons why the districts and schools and teachers want to go in this direction of helping students develop some competencies in the soft skills. We're going to talk a little bit about why it matters. We all have a sense of why it matters. That slide is going to go fast. We're at a 10,000-foot view, splitting the kinds of assessments into 3 types. A review of some trade-offs, when some are better to use than the others, but regardless of what you're using, what some of the characteristics are of the good items in there. And this is probably most important. If you leave with nothing else, you need to leave with a couple of websites in mind, because there's lots of good information available online. Good researchers and practitioners have tested out a lot of these things, and there's information about how they worked, what kinds of studies they were used in, what grade levels they're good for, whether or not they cost money, whether or not you have to be trained to actually use them. So we will share a sampling of those, but most important, I think, for anybody here would be to know where to get more and how to tease it out for your own use. And then we'll just touch a little bit on challenges and what other people have learned. A lot of that comes from the people we work with in Western Pennsylvania, but that comes from other folks too. And a lot of it is sort of common sense, but it behooves us to pay attention to it here. When we talk about soft skills, it's a catch-all phrase that most people don't like, including me. I'm sort of a hard skills person. But it can be called lots of things, and you've seen it called lots of things. 21st century skills, job-ready skills. There's the 5 C's that I think NEA uses. There are all sorts of things, and we'll get to that in a moment. But lots of good people doing research have taken the various little categories and the labels that people used and grouped them. And this is important because this particular group has a lot of credibility, and they've done a lot of work. And so if you understand and have a sense of their labels, you can go just about anywhere and sort out better what's available under a certain competency. So this is the Consortium on Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. They're located in Chicago. You probably bump into them all the time in your work. And they've looked at everything, lots of instruments, lots of research, and they've categorized it this way: self-awareness, ability to assess one's own feelings and values, strengths, things like that; self-management, controlling your own emotions in productive ways; social awareness, seeing another's perspective, and you can all see how this takes on a dynamic in a school setting or for our students in their later life settings. Relationship skills, promoting effective exchanges. A lot of that falls under the communication heading that a lot of people use, and responsible decision making. So that would be solving problems, analyzing situations. Some of this leadership stuff comes to play there. And just quickly, this is the slide we won't linger on, but as we know, everybody we can imagine in life have cited the importance of these competencies. The employers that I mentioned, higher education officials, and our own K-12 educators. And I know Dr. Haidt was mentioning the goals for the Philadelphia School District, saying that it's to increase academic performance of every child. And there's a lot of research that as students, as there were efforts under place to help students improve their social and emotional competencies, there also was evidence that those students were increasing academic competencies. So it's clear that these do vary together, and it behooves us as educators to be attentive to it. The assessments, just broadly, as you can imagine, would be self-report, where students are talking about themselves. I finish my homework assignments before they're late. After studying hard, if I didn't do as well as I thought, I circle back and figure out why. That's under grit and responsibility, which, as you notice, is not one of the 5 labels I used, but it falls under probably the responsible decision-making or managing self-management. Educators, this is teachers observing. An example from this instrument for personal responsibility is during the last 4 weeks, this student, did he try to do his or her best, do things independently? Now, as we look to that oval on the side about the characteristics of a good item, no matter where it appears, we would try to do his or her best. That's a little bit subjective. Nonetheless, it's in this instrument, and this instrument gets lots of use and has lots of credibility. So, you know, life isn't perfect. And then there's the report card. This has come out recently, actually, maybe in the last 2 or 3 years, from Brookings. This is Dr. Whitehurst. He's a noted researcher, and he was feeling that too often in our schools or other places, we come up with labels and things that can't really be observed. And so they're subjective, they're open to questioning, it's hard to communicate what that really means. And so he came up with the notion of a report card. So a teacher can do this pretty quickly. And he came up with 30 items. I've got copies of his paper, but also the link is widely available. So here are some of his items. You can imagine how a teacher would do this. Under social skills, thinking of one student, provides peers with positive feedback, offers help or assistance. And there are some more. Under self-management, controls displays of temper when angry, accepts legitimate rules, responds in socially appropriate ways. Academic soft skills, works independently, completes assigned tasks, approaches to learning, enjoys school, takes on challenging tasks, has confidence in his or her abilities. Now clearly, this is another take on a particular set of observations that a student has about that a teacher has about a student. But the useful thing there is that if a teacher is working with a student or in a parent conference, those are the things that a teacher can cite and say, look, let's say in science class, in the last 6 weeks, if this is a 6-week kind of conference schedule, you know, we had 5 opportunities to lead a group and present results from the group or whatever. This person didn't volunteer ever. And so not only is it useful feedback, but the teacher can remember in the next 6 weeks, you know, I think I'm going to have Jimmy practice this. After all, practicing these things in school is a safe place to hone these skills. We wouldn't want him to just head out and all of a sudden be at Chevron or something, trying to learn how to lead a group. And so The beauty of the report card thing is it's immediate. Teachers see it, they can talk about it, share observations with parents pretty easily. But even Dr. Whitehurst, when he says, you know, good ways to use this, don't try to use this to assess change. It's not particularly good looking at assessments over time, and don't call it an assessment. Once again, the appropriateness of a type of instrument depends on its use. And so the student self-report, as long as the student's used to doing it and there's no stakes and it can go quickly and you can do it a lot, that's a pretty good valid assessment. If we're looking at how well one of our little attempts at trying to work on these competencies is going, that would be okay as long as it's not high stakes. For the educators, it's a good way to look at a formative look at something in particular the educator's trying to do in the classroom or maybe in little groups of classrooms. And of course, there are some downsides too. It's hard to do that and try to describe a group. You can't say on the average our third graders are doing such and such. That's not useful that way. And then the report, as I mentioned, is good for immediate conversations with students and parents, but it's not good for trying to show change over time. So there's this mixture, and it depends on what you want to text and what you're going to do with it. So in our work with these districts in Western Pennsylvania, we're doing some consulting and some workshops and sort of ongoing engagement with them. And we decided to look at a lot of the instruments available, what they're good at, who says they worked in certain research studies or even with individual students, and come up with what we call a fact sheet. You'll notice that it's not just a sheet, it is several. But what this is a compilation of instruments that we found, and they're easy to find. And we did a sort because the districts we work with want to work with, for the most part, middle schoolers and high schoolers. There are copies of these available, and it's available online. I bought a whole bunch, as you can imagine. And we used the labels that Cassell came up with, the Chicago group I mentioned, and we grouped them, grouped some of the instruments that we found according to those labels, but we also looked at the RAND website. They have a huge body of work, which is excellent. It's a little bit newer than the Cassell Compendium online. And we took the RAND assessments that they didn't quite describe the same way as Cassell and translated them to Cassell's labels. So you'll see here there are categories, the 5 I mentioned. There are individual instruments, and we try to include a sample, for example, of items. It says on here if it's free or not. It tells where to get it. It tells where to learn more information about who used it before and what they found out. And this is just a small sampling. If you go to the website, and I did a screenshot that you probably can't see, but the point of this is you go to the website, you can tell immediately what to do. Even I could tell what to do. And they have academic and the non-academic or soft skills. So that's the first sort that you do. And then you can say what grade you're interested in. And so I said grade 7 just for fun. And I told them that I wanted interpersonal or intrapersonal. I wanted both of those. And so I came up with a bunch. And I just captured these 2. And you can see under each one there will be sort of sub-competencies. They're in the Cassell categories. But there'll be other things that spell out what's under that label a little more. Here's RAND. They do the same thing. I have 1 minute. RAND does the same thing. You can go to their website. I've got the links in the slides, but also slides are available electronically from the school district. And you can do the same thing. You can set up your own sort. Things pop up. You get some evidence about whether or not it has measured appropriately and if it has been useful to other people. So here's the hard part, and this is the part that rests on the educators in the local setting. What is it in the world that I want to see change in these students? Everybody calls it by something different. You'll get maybe 85 different labels, and you and a group of little teachers that are going to do this have to figure out what are the behaviors I want to see change, and then what are the practical considerations, cost, time, things like that. That's the Jangle. We did a blog trying to document everything everybody calls these, and National Research Council says, yeah, that's the Jangle. Everybody has a different label. So figure out, in terms of behaviors, what's of interest, and then go to Cassell labels and figure out where some assessments are. Most importantly, we're emphasizing that this needs to be coherent with instruction. As I pointed out in the earlier example, Like kids have been given assignments to work in a team and do book reports, or maybe science. I love science. Hands-on things. And they work in a team like they were doing in your, with the little robot thing and all that. And somebody has to explain what they did, or somebody has to make sure they get the assignment done on time or whatever. That's doing leadership practice that's coherent with instruction. So that's the kind of thing that thoughtful teacher teams can sort of build in a little bit, and then build in a little assessment. And maybe in that case they want to do the report card or whatever. And then of course there are resources. These things, of course time is important, but also some of these cost a little bit of money, or there's some training involved or whatever. And that's me, that's my glam shot. But I'm easy to find. It's Janders2 at wested.org. We're a partner with Mathematica on this rel. And what we do is try to help people find things and do things and try things. And we tell people start small, give it a shot. It won't work perfectly the first time, but you'll be doing some tweaking. So that's my pep talk. And there are all sorts of instruments over here, and the fact sheet is over here. Thank you.